Once upon a time, there was a hungry fox walking through the forest. As he wandered, he saw a bunch of juicy grapes hanging from a vine high up on a tree. The grapes looked ripe and delicious, and the fox's mouth began to water. Those grapes would be perfect for my lunch, he thought. Determined to eat them, the fox decided to jump and reach the grapes. But they were too high for him to grab. The fox jumped once, twice, and even 3 times, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't reach the grapes. I just need to jump a little higher, the fox thought, and he took a few steps back to get a running start. With all his strength, he leaped into the air, hoping to grab the grapes. But once again, they were just out of his reach. The fox was getting frustrated, but he didn't want to give up. After several more attempts, the fox was starting to feel tired. His legs were sore from all the jumping, and he was getting hungrier by the minute. He sat down under the tree, staring at the grapes above him. "Why are they so high?" he complained to himself. "It's not fair. These grapes should be easier to reach." But no matter how much he complained, the grapes stayed where they were, far out of his reach. The fox tried one more time, giving his biggest jump yet. He stretched out his paws, but once again, he missed the grapes. Exhausted and annoyed, the fox sat down and glared at the grapes. He knew he couldn't reach them, but he didn't want to admit defeat. "Those grapes are probably sour anyway," he said to himself. "I wouldn't want to eat sour grapes." With that, the fox turned around and walked away. As the fox walked away, he tried to convince himself that he didn't really want the grapes. "They wouldn't have tasted good," he muttered. "I'm better off without them." But deep down, the fox knew the truth. He had wanted the grapes very badly, but he couldn't reach them. Instead of accepting that, he pretended that the grapes weren't worth his effort. This made him feel a little better as he continued on his way. The fox's story teaches us an important lesson. Sometimes, when we can't get what we want, we try to convince ourselves that it wasn't worth it. Instead of admitting defeat, we tell ourselves that the thing we wanted wasn't good enough. But in reality, it's okay to not succeed every time. What matters is that we keep trying and learn to accept the challenges we face. True satisfaction comes from our efforts, not just the outcome. As the fox disappeared into the forest, the grapes remained hanging on the vine, untouched. The fox had learned to give up on something he couldn't have, but the lesson could have been different. Maybe if the fox had tried a different approach, like finding help or using a tool, he might have reached the grapes after all. Sometimes, it's not about giving up, but about finding new ways to achieve our goals. The fox's quick decision to walk away from the grapes shows how easy it can be to give up when things get hard. In life, we may face challenges that seem impossible at first. But instead of convincing ourselves that the goal isn't worth it, we should think of other ways to reach it. Persistence and creativity can help us overcome even the toughest obstacles, just like the fox might have reached the grapes with a different plan. The fox may not have tasted the grapes, but he walked away with a sense of pride, thinking he didn't need them. This is something many of us do when faced with failure. But instead of pretending we don't care, it's more helpful to reflect on what we can do differently next time. Growth and success come from learning from our experiences, not avoiding the things we find difficult or unattainable. In the end, the story of the fox and the grapes reminds us to be honest with ourselves about what we want and why. It's okay to fail, and it's okay to want something we can't have right now. What matters is how we handle those moments and whether we learn from them. True wisdom comes from accepting our limitations while still striving to improve and grow, both in our efforts and in our understanding. The lesson of the fox and the grapes also teaches us the value of contentment. Sometimes, we may not get what we want, but that doesn't mean we should feel upset or frustrated. Instead, we can find peace in knowing that we did our best. Life is full of moments when things don't go as planned, but learning to accept those moments with grace can bring us true happiness and satisfaction. As the fox continued his journey through the forest, he found other things to enjoy. The sound of birds singing, the feel of the soft grass under his paws, and the warmth of the sun on his fur made him realize that there was more to life than just the grapes. Sometimes, the things we think we need aren't as important as we imagine, and there are always other joys to be found if we stay open to them. The fox's experience also teaches us that patience is important. If he had waited a little longer or tried a different approach, maybe he could have reached the grapes. In life, patience often helps us achieve our goals, even when they seem out of reach. Instead of giving up or making excuses, we can take a step back, think about our situation, and try again with a new perspective and renewed determination. The story of the fox and the grapes can be applied to many situations in our lives. Whether it's a challenge at school, a goal at work, or a personal dream, we all face moments where things seem difficult or impossible. But if we stay focused, patient, and persistent, we can often find a way to succeed. And even if we don't, the effort we put in helps us grow and learn for the future. As the sun began to set, the fox found a quiet place to rest. He may not have eaten the grapes, but he was content with what he had. He had learned an important lesson that day: not every goal can be reached immediately, and that's okay. Life is a journey with ups and downs, and finding peace along the way is just as important as reaching our destination. The fox felt satisfied, knowing that there would always be other opportunities. In the forest, many animals heard about the fox's story. Some laughed at him for not reaching the grapes, while others admired his ability to walk away. The lesson they took from the fox's experience varied, but one thing was clear: life doesn't always go as planned, and how we respond to failure matters just as much as the success we seek. The animals learned that trying and learning from the journey is what truly counts. The next day, the fox woke up feeling refreshed. He continued his journey through the forest, looking for new adventures. He was no longer thinking about the grapes, but rather, he was excited about the possibilities ahead. The fox knew that there would always be challenges, but he felt ready to face them. He had learned that failure was just part of the process, and it didn't have to stop him from enjoying life. As the fox walked through the forest, he met a wise old owl. The owl had heard about the fox's attempt to get the grapes and asked him, "What did you learn from your experience?" The fox thought for a moment and replied, "I learned that sometimes, things don't go the way we want, but that's okay. What matters is how we handle it and what we learn from it." The owl nodded in approval, pleased with the fox's newfound wisdom. The story of the fox and the grapes reminds us that life is full of challenges and disappointments, but how we respond to them shapes our future. By accepting our failures and learning from them, we grow stronger and wiser. The fox may not have gotten the grapes, but he gained something more valuable: the ability to be content and to keep moving forward, knowing that every experience has something to teach.